Thank you, Damien. It was fascinating. If anyone would like to ask a question of Damien, you can raise your hand. There's a raise your hand button, or you can submit a question anonymously by pressing the Q and the A button. We have a question submitted from Zachary Lure, who is an atheist. He says, does Damien believe that Christians are able to be moral, to make moral decisions? If so, on what basis?
I believe that everyone is actually able to, for the same reason. It's basically that they use their own rationale. Most Christians, to me, say that they believe in a God, and they say that God gives them morality, but actually they usually choose what's moral by what's basically dependent on society and dependent on their experience. But even then, they usually, like, let's say the Bible doesn't condone slavery. It doesn't say slavery is bad, but most Christians will agree it's bad. The Bible doesn't promote, in a sense, women's rights, but most Christians now would agree that women's rights are a good thing. So they don't really use the Bible, to me, as their actual morality. Unless, to me, they're fundamentalists. When they're fundamentalists, they're more appropriately using the actual words from the Bible to support their beliefs in morality. So yeah, I feel like, of course, Christians can be moral.
Okay, let me ask you a question just off the back of that. You said that Scripture nowhere condemns slavery. Let me ask you a question concerning 1 Timothy 1, where the Apostle Paul writes, now we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully, understanding this. The law is not only meant for the just, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and sinners, for the unholy and profane, for those who strike their fathers and mothers, for murderers, sexually immoral, men practicing sexuality. And then it says, enslavers, liars, perjurers, whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine. And so, is that not a condemnation of enslaving people?
Well, like Paul also talks about, isn't it slaves obey your masters? And we're supposed to be slaves of Christ?
We are supposed to be slaves of Christ, but being a slave of Christ is different from being a slave of an unjust master, such as, for example, the ancient Hebrews had been enslaved in Egypt, and that was under a very, very harsh
Hebrews were not slaves in Egypt. That archaeologically has been disproven, so that's not a case.
That's a separate discussion. We'll come to that later, but let's finish discussing slavery in the Bible first. There's different types of slavery. I mean, we tend to retroject a sort of a Victorian era, 19th century Negro slave trade back into the...
Yeah, but that's a bunch of nonsense, because the Bible talks about as long as you don't beat a person to death, if they can survive for, I think it's 3 days, then that's, you're not, even if they die after 3 days, that's okay, because as long as you weren't trying to kill them. So I think that it's just trying to throw a red herring. Yeah, how we understand today. Yeah, slavery is wrong. The term is a correct term for the time. To say that would be to say that the term was being translated. It's not mistranslated.
Slavery in the world of the ancient Hebrews was where people would sell themselves into slavery in order to pay off debt and things. So it was an act of desperation. It wasn't.
But there's a difference between a slave that was a Hebrew and a slave that was non-Hebrew, because the laws did not apply to non-Hebrews. And also, you could sell your daughter into sexual slavery. So I don't think that Paul's statement, maybe he was abhorrent to, since he was talking, maybe he was abhorrent to, the Jews being slaves. He's not abhorrent to slavery in general. Jesus didn't say anything about slavery being bad.
Yes, there's also a lot of things that Jesus didn't talk about, which, nonetheless, presumably complained about. Now, I see incidentally that Sarah's in the audience. I know she's done a lot of research on the issue of slavery, so I wonder if she wants to weigh in on that particular discussion. But let me ask you, because I had a number of questions concerning your presentation that you gave. You said you started off as a Christian and then you moved towards the position of atheism. Did you lose your religious views first before you lost your generic theism, or did you go straight from religious theism to atheism?
Yeah, I went from a Christian. I didn't have a generic theism ever. I had Christianity. I said that I didn't believe in the Christianity styles that my mom and my dad were doing. My mom, evangelical Pentecostal, and singing and dancing and talking in tongues, and my dad, a Christian cult. I thought that those versions of Christianity was wrong. I didn't think that Christianity was wrong. I never had a vague theism.
Okay. So you never had a bare theism. Yeah, that's interesting, because it seems to me that the arguments for theism stand on their own merits independently of the arguments for Christian theism. So it seems to me that even if Christian theism is shown to be false, then theism still stands on its own merits now.
Well, like I said, I already started with the Christian view that all other forms of religion were false. I mean, that's what most of you probably have. That most Christians have, that all of the theism is automatically false. Christian is the only correct. That is what I started with. The same exact view. So when I stopped believing that Christianity was true, it wasn't like I was able to give a big, support for other forms of religion. Like I told you, when I first realized that Christianity was false, and the Christian God was false, and Jesus was false, I did not immediately call myself. It was about 6 months till I was comfortable to call myself an atheist. I wasn't really sure. I started looking at it, but I didn't have some great, strong belief that any God or anything was real, because I already, as a Christian, believe all the religions were false. I did go, actually, like I said, I took a class. I did actually look into other religions, not with a great thing that they were true, but just wanted to see, and started educating myself.
I mean, when I say bare theist or generic theist, I refer to simply the fact that God exists as demonstrated by natural theology.
Well, you said the fact. You mean your belief, your proposition, your claim. It's not a fact.
The proposition that God exists stands independently of the arguments for Christian theism.
And like I said, it was about 6 months till I fully felt confident to call myself an atheist after I realized Christianity and Christian theism was false.
Okay. And what brought you to the conclusion that atheism or that theism was false? What brought you to that conclusion?
Well, like I said, I started understanding the relation that morality has, and understanding if there was a designer. Because at first I started, speaking of what you're saying, I started questioning after I left Christianity, I started questioning, well, is there such thing as a designer? So but I didn't believe it. I just started thinking, could this proposition be true on its own? And I started understanding stuff like the fact that 99 to 95% of all living things that were on the earth have gone extinct. If that is a design, it is an incredibly failure. Imagine a child's test comes and they get an F. You wouldn't go, woo, you made it, how wonderful, perfect. And I realized that if it is a God, it's the most unintelligent designer. And that if it's that, is it really a God? No. It's just ridiculous to me. The fact of that alone, and the fact, like I said, of understanding that there's pain in the world, and none of it could be there, and the fact that we eat on each other, and you don't need the theology of Christianity to realize that aspects do not match up, which would be any kind of a creative, intelligent force. To me.
Okay. I have more to say on that, but I do want to come to Sarah, because she has her hand up, and I know she's very well read on slavery in particular. She should pick her up. Hey, Sarah.
Hello. Hello. I'm going to turn myself on camera because I'm still just leaving work.
Okay, you can turn off your camera if you want.
Alright. Hi, I caught the end of the discussion. You were talking about slavery, and I think I heard you talking about selling your daughter slavery, things like that.
Yeah.
What's your Yeah, I'm just wondering, God is describing a situation. He is not saying this is what is allowed. I'm just wondering where you got that from.
You're wondering what now?
Where you got it from, is I think you said that you're allowed to sell your daughter into slavery?
The Bible states that. I believe it's in Leviticus. I don't know off the top of my head the Bible verses, but yeah.
I think you're talking about Exodus 21. It's not, God is not sanctioning selling your daughters into slavery. It's just saying, if a man does it, this is how the situation is.
So what you're saying is there's a moral way to do it, even though it's not God saying to do it. But God is supposedly the giver of all morality. So you're saying that morality happens outside of God? Or this is not immoral and God didn't want it, but God didn't condemn it?
If I can answer. God is describing a situation that was very, very common in the ancient Near East for people who got into debt to sell their servants, sell their children, sell themselves. So this is a situation that God is aware of, and He's saying if it happens, do you know what God was saying about if it happens? Do you know what He said about it?
Do I remember the exact verse? No.
Okay, so God is saying you can't just treat her like...
Could you read the verse?
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's Exodus 21, verse 7. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not meet her master, who is designated for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he has designated her for his son, he shall deal with her as a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. So he's talking about the woman, she's actually treated as a wife. She's a wife. He's talking about...
No, it did not say a wife, because it said you could transfer it to your son. So if it was a wife, why would it say that No, see, I feel like that you're actually trying to give a moral justification for an absolutely immoral act. First off, let me finish.
Can I just correct you on one point? You just said transferred to your son. It's not transferred like the father uses her and then he transfers. No.
It's property, yes, but it is property.
Which is normal in the ancient Near East.
That is equivocation to your morality. Also, people worshipped Baal. People also, sacrificed, humans. Are you saying that because it happened in the Near East, well, we got to be okay? The fact that, Abraham was going to sacrifice his son, don't hold that morality accountable. As long as they did it in the Middle East, totally fine. That is not moral. That is actually being immoral in your understanding. And also, it does say, like the males are treated, so the males can be treated differently. But it's still, the fact that it actually even classifies that any part of that is okay. It doesn't say this is okay, but it still happens. It says, this is how you're supposed to do it. And Jesus never said that part of the Bible, that was totally wrong, that was not my word.
I hear you, but I just think you're misunderstanding.
I hear you, but you're not listening to me.
I'm listening to you.
You are making an excuse. Look, you didn't use God morality. You used an excuse. You said, this is okay because other people did it. Wrong. If that's a morality, then as long as other countries hurt women, then we can hurt women. It's totally fine because other people do it. That's not morality. That is an absolute excuse. It is vile to me, and you should understand it's a non-moral statement.
Now you're misquoting me, and you're the one who said that I wasn't listening, but you're the one who keeps interrupting me. If you read it, it's very, very clear. When it talks about you don't send them out as the male slaves do, you're to protect her. This was kind of revolutionary in the ancient Near East.
Oh my God, even worse. Now you're actually, once again, you're using pseudo-morality, saying that selling a slave a certain way, rape is okay as long as you use a condom. This kind of, that's what I'm saying. Religion is vile. It's making you a reasonable person make an unreasonable moral statement. Nothing about the sale of a woman is reasonable. Nothing about it is ethical. Nothing. Zero.
Let me ask you a question. In the ancient Near East, when you've run out of your grain, when you've run out of your animals, and remember, this is not God saying this is the way it's meant to live. If you go back to the beginning, God is saying, if you do what I say, if you do, and but there will be no poor among you if only you obey the Lord. This is Deuteronomy 15. If that's God's perfect plan, and He's saying, okay, the world is not perfect, and this is how I'm sorting it out. I mean, what do you want the person to do? To starve to death? This is how they did things in the ancient Near East. You can't apply the 21st century logic to the ancient Near East.
Wrong. Your God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. No part of morality can be okay at one time and not okay at another time. The fact that someone didn't know something means they were not moral. They had a very limited...
I asked you, what is a person meant to do when they have no grain, when they have no oxen or any animals, and they need, it's like you do work for a certain time. It's not like the transatlantic slave trade where there's no end to the contract.
Do you know that, speaking of the transatlantic...
Can I please finish my point?
Yeah.
When people sold themselves into slavery in the ancient Near East, often, and you can look at the Nuzi tablets, you can look at many of the Mesopotamian tablets, usually there was an end date. I'm not saying that slavery was always good and that slave masters treated their slaves perfectly. I'm not saying that.
So can you say it's bad? Can you say it's immoral?
Almost finished. You cannot equivocate your feelings, because I think you're being quite emotional, your feelings with recent slavery. And bear in mind that people today, even till today, scholars cannot come up with a single definition of slavery, because in so many different eras and so many different times it meant different things in different contexts. So your definition of slavery is not the same as slavery in the ancient Near East.
Okay, so you are wrong. I'm not equivocating. I'm holding you to a moral standard that is unchangeable, right? Your God's unchangeable, and you're saying that it's okay that they sold them into slavery because at that time that was common. But at this time it's common to watch porn. So does that mean that people that watch porn totally not committing any crime? Not committing any sin? It is a sin in your own thing to do something immoral. You're saying that it's okay. This is a typical Christian argument. It's using pseudo-morality, non-morality, to actually try to make something immoral moral. But remember, what about the verse that says that you can beat your slave, and if they die within 3 days, you're not held accountable? That certainly is not some kind of indentured servant. Or if it is...
Actually, it's, if you look at, let's see the verse that you're talking about. I think probably Exodus 21 verse 12.
I don't know. I don't remember verses like that.
No, that's fine. I don't expect you to. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. And when a man quarrels and one strikes the other man with a stone, when it's 20:21. So when a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies under his hands, he shall be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or two, he shall not be avenged, for the slave is his money. I'm going to read that in
money? Or is it his property?
It says money. Translation that I'm...
Well, I heard for property, but whatever, money. What does money mean? Money is something of value.
I think you can say property. I think you can say property if you want.
Yeah, right, property. So property is not a separate person working under a condition of indentured servant, that they're still their own person. We're just working the time off. No, it's your property means you own them. And if you could beat someone to death and not be held accountable, then there's a special class of being, because any other time you commit a murder, it's a murder, right? Or is maybe sometimes not a murder?
You live in America where it's lawful to commit murder under state legislation. You have the death penalty in some states. So well, you understand.
Yeah, but I am actually not for the death penalty. But that's a totally different point. You're actually, once again, you throw a red herring about something that has nothing to do with anything.
No, you just brought up something. I'm just answering you. You understand that it's the states that, if there's capital punishment in a country, that's the punishment and it's not murder. But I want to read that verse in conjunction with verse 12. It says, whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. So this is not talking about slaves. This is just the laws for Israel.
Right. Except that, right, the law, but then they say, but the class of the slave is your property. So if they die not right away, then it's not falling under the same other law. There's a secondary law for slaves.
I'm trying to explain the parallelism. I can't say that word. I'm trying to explain how they're parallel. Is that okay? Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. When men quarrel, and one strikes the other with a stone, I've just jumped at verse 18, with his fist, and the man does not die, but takes to his bed, then if the man rises again and walks outdoors with the staff, he who struck him shall be clear, and shall only pay for the loss of his time, and shall have him thoroughly healed. So you have verse 12 talking about, verse 20 talking about slaves, and you have the earlier verse 12 talking about children of Israel. In the same, if you look at the crime, and you call it a crime, in the same instance, you have the perpetrator. One is confined to bed, talking about the free man. One is cannot get up. You can have what's happened. But the free man will require medical attention. The slave will require medical attention. The instrument used, with the example with the free man, it's a stone or a fist. The example of the slave, it's a rod. The motive, all discipline. The punishment, the punitive damage is loss of time in both cases. The compensation is medical attention in both cases. If they die, it's execution in both cases.
No, it's not execution for the slave if they don't die right away. No.
Exactly. If you heard what I said, if they get up, if they're confined to bed, then it's compensation. If they die, it's execution. And want to respond?
I just think it's ridiculous. Go ahead. So you're not using a moral standard. You're just saying that it is okay.
I still don't think you answered my question when I said when somebody has no food, when somebody has no oxen, no means of a livelihood. I mean, and I still think you're applying 21st century slavery until the ancient Near East. Today, I will contract with my employer for my time. I will contract with my employer for other things. So I think
no.
Much nicer now, but I just think that the way.
So you're saying slavery was just work? That's all it was, just work.
I think you should listen to the anthropologists who.
I do listen to I do know anthropologists and archaeologists when it comes to religion.
Yeah. You should listen to the fact that they cannot agree a definition of slavery because it's meant so many different things in so many contexts. I think you should at least look at that point.
And you would look at the point that the only context in the Bible is work. You're not going to accept the point. It's your own statement. So hold on a second. Your own statement is that there's all kinds of contexts. But you're going to say that the only context that the Bible talks about is the one that has all freedom and no slavery.
No. I didn't say that it's only work. Let me read to you Leviticus 19. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as you love yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Let me read something else. You shall not give up to his master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall dwell with you in your midst, in the place that he shall choose within one of your towns. Wherever it suits him, you shall not wrong him. That's Deuteronomy 23:15 and 16. It's different to modern day slavery. That's my point.
Is it though? Because it says the person is escaped. Isn't that exactly like the railroad when people escaped? So you're saying that they're being protected. Why are they being protected? I thought it was a job.
I
thought it was a job.
No, I didn't say that was the only context. That's you misquoting me. I think God's saying, you shall love him as yourself. It's very different to the transatlantic slave trade, very different to the Islamic Arab slave trade. I don't see that anywhere.
The Islamic slave trade. You know that the first slave ship, the nickname was the good ship Jesus? So Don't go Islamic slave trade. Christians were at the forefront of slavery in America.
Excuse me, do you know the dates of the Arab-Islamic slave trade? Do you know the dates?
The dates of what? The Islamic slave trade?
Yeah.
No, I don't know the exact dates, no.
Starts from the 7th century.
Uh-huh.
7th century. All the way up to Saudi Arabia only abolished slavery in 1962. 1,400 years of slavery. 1,400 years.
Hold on, no, but are you saying that the 7th century, those were actual slaves?
Of course.
But the ones in the Bible, those aren't actual slaves. That's what you're saying?
Again, can you show me a slave trade where it says, you must love him as yourself? Can you show me a slave trade? Show me anything in the transatlantic slave trade that has that narrative, or the Arab Islamic slave trade.
Right. So the Christian that brought the first boat to Cuba, when he brought it, and the Africans died, he said, I can't remember exactly, but something along the lines that it was proof to him that they were godless because God was not with them and allowed them to die on the voyage over. He was totally comfortable.
Okay, so that's individual speaking. My authority is the Bible, and my example.
The Bible is not authority; it's a book of claims that are unfounded and are not historical.
In your opinion,
I can send you a document. There's a whole book that was written called "Uncovering the Bible," and it has to do with an archaeologist in Israel that was actually an Israeli. And he went to Palestine, he went to Egypt, he went to Jordan, he went to Syria, and he did the archaeology trying to prove Judaism, realized he actually became secular, that it was all false. There's no evidence for it. Absolutely none.
Okay, I'm interested in archaeology, so I wouldn't mind if you send that to Jonathan, and I'm sure
I will
disseminate it.
Yeah.
But I think we've gone around the slavery issue, so thanks for sharing, and thanks for dialoguing with me.
No problem.
Vladimir Sisik had some additional comments to make on slavery at this YouTube. Vladimir, do you have a comment, Vladimir, on that topic?
Pretty much addressed everything that I wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
I say that Damien first claimed that it was sexual slavery, but that was dropped, I think.
I didn't drop it. It is sexual slavery. Selling your daughter is sexual slavery. Absolutely.
How is it sexual slavery?
Selling your daughter into sex is sexual
Where
slavery. How is it not? So if I sold my daughter today, you would call that, what, just marriage? It's sexual slavery.
Where does it say it's sexual slavery?
It says that she's going to be a sexual thing to marriage, and if he defiles her, which is sex, that he can't then transmit her later and take away her property. It is sex, and it gives her to her son. What else is he doing? He's giving... in other words, she has no right to her sexual body. You asked me a question. She has no right to her sexual body, correct? Her father can give her sexual body to others. Then even in that, the person he gave her to, he could give it to his son, so he could then transmit that sexual thing onto her son. Once again, she has no say. If that's not sexual slavery, then you need to maybe rethink of what you think sexual slavery is.
No, what it actually says is that he can give her to her son in marriage and must treat her as her daughter. So her owner must treat her
yes,
as
right, her owner, exactly. You said the correct word, owner. Her owner,
yes.
So she didn't choose to get married, correct? She was given from her father out of not choice, and then the father of the person she gave to can then give it to the son. So once again, she has no choice. It doesn't say if she likes it, if she wants it, if she agrees. No, it doesn't really matter. It is sexual slavery. Absolutely. I didn't let that go. Any moral person should be seriously offended if someone says that giving your daughter without her consent to people is not sexual slavery. How about the disgusting thing that a daughter is supposed to marry her rapist? Once again, seriously disgusting morality. That you should actually, it's ridiculous, or pay the father some money for her virginity, because she's property to the father.
Anything further, Vladimir?
So, Damien, you have said, well, she has no say in it, and it's absolutely slavery. Well, you see, Damien, as a slave, she was probably sold because she was in a very bad financial situation.
What does that mean?
It's just to the son is very beneficial for her. I don't see how she would be against it if she's actually getting outside of slave relationship and is becoming an actual part of the family, Damien.
Okay, so you think it's ethical. Hold on a second. Forget about the past. You think it's ethical at any time to sell your daughter without her choice to other people? You think that's fine? You're trying to make an excuse. Well, if they're poor, if they're in need,
your daughter, and if you cannot care for her, then do you think that selling her into that sort of slavery, which is way different than the sort of slavery that you have in your mind, I think it's definitely fine.
So it's ethical. It is ethical to sell someone against their will into slavery as long as you're poor. Is that what you're saying?
If you cannot feed her, absolutely. In that sort of slavery, obviously.
You know what? That offends me. That seriously offends me.
In your mind.
I find you to be an immoral person. That offends me. Seriously. That's disgusting.
What is your picture of slavery in your head, if you could describe it to me?
What's my picture of slavery? I don't understand what you're trying to classify a thing. The person being sold against their will to as property to someone else. The daughter being property, another person being property, your son being property, whatever. It doesn't matter. Someone, it's not really that to me that complicated. Someone is
against your will.
What's that?
Where does it say against her will? Against your will?
Let's see. If it doesn't care about her opinion, and it says a father can do it, it's not saying that her will even matters.
Where
does it not?
Say it doesn't care about her opinion?
If it says the father can do it, who controls your sexuality? Your father or you? You do. So anybody, in other words, it's rape. Like I said, rape. Rape is anyone doing something without consent to another person.
Rape is not asking you, if the father has say in it. I was asking you, where does it say that the daughter herself doesn't have any say?
Because it doesn't say that it even matters. The father makes the choice, and then it says the other man makes the choice for the son. Tell me where it says anything that the daughter is even acknowledged. That she chooses.
You're making an argument from silence.
And you're making an argument that selling someone's body is an ethical thing.
I'm relying on the fact that it says that you must love them as yourself. Like, God has a clear motive, and He's telling people that you must love them.
There's people that would rape someone that would say that they love them, and that's why they're raping them.
Damien, what I'm saying in terms of God's character, I can support by scripture. What you're saying, that she had no choice, that nobody ever asked her, you can't support. This is a presupposition you have in your mind.
So when it says that the father can do it, and it doesn't mention the daughter, that you're saying that ethically leaves it open that the daughter can choose. Really?
Damien, can I ask you something?
What?
Sorry, Sarah. I just want to nail this down. Have you ever read somebody like Professor Douglas K. Stewart's sort of understanding of case law, casuistic law in Exodus, and what it means in its original setting when a father allowed his daughter to actually work and sort of in that setting?
Have I read case law? No.
Yes, basically, what I'm asking is your definition, according to the time and day in the book of Exodus, and sort of the definition for case law and its definition of slavery. If you look, for instance, at an authority, like I said, like Douglas K. Stewart, that looks at...
Is it a Christian authority?
Unfortunately not, sir.
Oh, it's not a Christian. So it's an atheist or from another religion?
I'm absolutely not sure of his conviction or his religion. All he's basically getting at is that he's driving sort of the point that in sort of the ancient Near Eastern sort of understanding, we can see that sort of slavery is defined more as sort of servitude rather than as you would
see now that sounds like a Christian apologetic for slavery, because Christians like to say that the slavery that they talks about, I have never heard someone but a Christian claim that the Bible states that.
You know why?
Because Christians have a confirmed bias to find it that way. You just said that it is okay to sell your daughter as long as you're poor. You felt that was totally ethical. I know, I understand. That's an unethical statement from a person that has a pseudo-ethic book to follow.
What do we mean by it?
What's that?
Yes, all we're trying to say, Damien, is if you study case law of Israel at the time, in your studies, have you ever found that somebody, and we need documentation for this, we could actually render slavery as sexual slavery, first of all, and secondly, as...
Okay, so hold on a second. Forget the slavery for a second. You do agree that they had arranged marriages, correct? They were not, even in fact, that isn't there, Fiddler on the Roof? Isn't that about arranged marriages? Isn't that whole thing about that? To say that they cared what the woman thought? No. People would do the daughter's will for her. To me, that it was unethical then. It is unethical tomorrow. It is unethical today.
Well, my question is very simple. It is just the following. Have you found in your studies that there's sort of any other context in what I've mentioned, that sort of slavery is sort of seen in Israel's sort of context as that being servant to? And secondly, is there another argument that you can make that it's not from silence, that can sort of show us that, a Christian sort of says anything, that it's not an independent speaker, that gives an objective view to the actual historical setting?
Well, you asked more than one question there. You didn't ask one question. So you said you were going to make it simple. You didn't make it simple. You asked several questions. You asked, have I ever heard anything that there was only one kind of slavery? No, I did not say there's only one kind of slavery. But I said that Christians say that the slavery that theirs relates to is only one kind of slavery. That is what I said. And I said it clearly is not the case. If you could beat a person who displeases you to death, or almost to death, and it's okay because it's your property, then that is not someone who's working a job.
What we're trying to say is basically that there's two biases that you have to deal with as well. The first one is if somebody says from any religious perspective what is observed historically, and is an authority archaeologically wise, or maybe in a specific setting, that person shouldn't be discounted because of his belief. Because I can do the same. I can just say, Damien, because you do not believe, obviously you've got an agenda as well, and therefore we can just dismiss it. It's absolutely ad hominem.
No, I didn't say that's the only reason. I said because they have this thing. Christians go out with a confirmation bias to actually remove all the things that would be unpleasant that are in the Old Testament. Which is funny because Jews don't do this. Jews believe only the Old Testament. Listen, I'm saying, hold on a second. Like I said, you asked a question. I'm saying to you, you asked me about anthropology, and I said, why is it that only Christians pull this tact? If this was true, who would have more reason? The Jews would have more reason to actually defend the Old Testament than you. But no, it's Christians who like to try to, just like the word rod. The word rod actually meant club in the Bible, in Hebrew. And it was actually a thing that was anywhere from 3 to 6 feet long with a big knob at the end. So, the fact that I said, you said it, that's why I was asking who it does it, because Christians have a bias to try to figure out how to make everything in the Bible sound reasonable. And I said, if it was true, the Jews would have more reason to than the Christians, since the Jews, that's the only book they have. If you could show me a Jewish person who says that it's not, that all slavery that what they're talking about was totally indentured servants, I would take that as way more credible than a Christian telling me. I'm not saying the Christian has to be wrong. I'm just saying Christians have a bias that doesn't match with the evidence.